The preterite versus the imperfect in Spanish. One of the hardest things for students to understand. But here's the main idea between the preterite versus the imperfect. The preterite is for a one-time action in the past, whereas the imperfect is for an ongoing action in the past. So, for example, hablé means I spoke, whereas hablaba can mean many different things. It can mean I was speaking, it could mean I used to speak. It can also take on the translation of I would speak. So for example, I would speak a lot when I was a kid. Be careful with that translation of would, because many students tend to confuse that translation with the conditional tense, meaning I would call you, but I'm busy. That is not the same as the imperfect. So I recommend you use a translation of used to and was doing something. So I was speaking or I used to speak. Another important thing to understand here is that many times native Spanish speakers will not attach the subject pronouns with the verb. So they won't say yo hablé, they'll just say hablé. Same thing with hablaba. They won't necessarily say yo hablaba or él hablaba, ella hablaba. They will simply say hablaba. And we need to understand what and who they are talking about based off of context clues. In this video, we're not going to go over the conjugations of the preterite and the imperfect, but I do have videos on this channel about that and inside my Fluent Spanish Speaker Academy, which you can check out by clicking the link in the video description. So, for example, fui al baile anoche. I went to the dance last night. Okay, that is a one-time action in the past. The reason I've underlined anoche is because it is a common trigger phrase for the preterite. When I hear something like anoche or ayer, which we're going to take a look at in a second, that lets me know, oh, this is most likely going to be the preterite. However, notice here how I have iba al baile anoche cuando. So I was going to the dance last night when, and then something happened. In Spanish, it is very common to have the imperfect going on and then get interrupted by the preterite. Okay, so remember, imperfect, ongoing action in the past, preterite, one-time action in the past. If that is the only thing you remember from this video, I will be happy. Okay, so another example is estaba cocinando cuando me llamó Batman. So I was cooking when Batman called me. It's a very common thing. It can be a little bit annoying, but you know what? I have to deal with it. So here, estaba is in the imperfect, meaning this was going on. I was doing something, which in this case is cocinando. This is what we call the progressive in Spanish. And it's the same idea as ing verbs in English. So cooking, laughing, eating, crying. Okay? So cocinando is for the AR verbs, and then yendo is for the ER and IR verbs. So for a verb like beber, it would be bebiendo. And for a verb like vivir, it would be viviendo. Okay, so estaba cocinando cuando me llamó Batman, when Batman called me. I could also say cocinaba cuando me llamó Batman. The only difference is that estaba cocinando is more specific, so I was cooking, that's a literal translation. However, cocinaba could mean I used to cook, I was cooking, I would cook. It all depends on the context. In this particular example, when I say cocinaba, I understand I'm saying I was cooking. However, most times I'll use something like estaba cocinando, okay? Una vez, ayer, entonces, anoche, and la semana pasada are all trigger phrases for the preterite. So when I hear the phrase una vez, that instantly lets me know that that literally happened one time in the past. So una vez yo vi esa película. One time I saw that movie. It's a one-time action in the past. Or anoche, like we saw here. Or la semana pasada fui a un concierto. Last week I went to a concert. I wasn't going to a concert. I didn't used to go to a concert. I went to a concert. Okay? Let's take a look at some examples. Let's take a look at some examples here, but first, more trigger phrases for the imperfect. So now, siempre, mientras, mucho, nunca, and muchas veces. So siempre, meaning always, mientras, meaning while, mucho, meaning a lot or much, nunca, meaning never, and muchas veces, meaning many times. So, for example, Siempre íbamos al parque cuando era niño. We used to always go to the park when I was a kid. Or nunca íbamos al parque cuando era niño. We used to never go to the park when I was a kid. The idea is that these things were ongoing in the past. They have no definitive beginning or end. So let's practice. Cuando yo blank niño, blank con fuegos artificiales. Okay? So here we need to decide if we're going to use the preterite or the imperfect. Okay? So let's check this out and feel free to pause if I'm going too fast. So, cuando yo era niño, I was a kid. Okay, I was continuing being a kid. Jugaba con fuegos artificiales. So, when I was a kid, I would or I used to play with fireworks. This is not actually true. My parents would have never let me done this, but I can dream. Okay, so cuando yo era, which is coming from the verb ser, and actually there are only 3 irregulars in the imperfect. There's ser, ir, and ver. Okay, so that makes your life a lot easier. So, cuando yo era niño, jugaba con fuegos artificiales. These were things that were ongoing in the past. I wouldn't say when I was a kid, because I wasn't being a kid one day and then I stopped being a kid the next. I was continuously being a kid. And same thing with jugaba, right? I used to play. I didn't play with them just one time, right? I played with fireworks that day and then I didn't the next. No, I'm just saying that I used to do that, okay? Next, nosotros blank por la playa cuando blank a nevar, okay? So, nosotros caminábamos por la playa, okay? This is ongoing. And then it gets interrupted by the verb empezar. Once again, remember that it's very common we have the imperfect for ongoing actions in the past, and they get interrupted by the preterite. So here we have empezó. And actually, the verb empezar is just preterite by nature because a thing only begins once. So, nosotros caminábamos por la playa. We were walking. We were continually walking, right? We didn't walk, right? It's not we walked, it's we were walking. So we were walking along the beach when it began to snow, which is very common in California, of course. So there you have it. That is the preterite versus the imperfect. Remember, the most important thing to remember is that the preterite is for one-time actions in the past, and the imperfect is for ongoing actions in the past. Muchas gracias por ver este video. Click the link in the video description if you want to check out our Fluent Spanish Speaker Academy. Our goal is to help you have a 10-minute conversation in 90 days without feeling unconfident. So check that out by clicking the link in the video description. Muchas gracias y espero que tengas muy buen día. Hasta luego.